Dogs podcast. I'm your host for this evening, Michael Anthony. You could see by to the right of me, I guess, is on your screen. Rich is not here tonight. He is a brand new father of his second daughter, so I know he's really, really busy. But back with me in the doghouse, hopefully keeping this episode under 2 hours, is Ben McCown. How are you, Ben?
I'm doing great. Yeah, trying to keep this one around an hour. I know I basically told my wife I was like, I got to do it this time. We got carried away with the draft episode, but it was just too much fun.
Yeah, my wife was like, "Yeah, I hope to see you soon when you come out of there." I was like, "I'm gonna try my best, but sometimes I talk too much." But I'm gonna do some less talking here because I want to ask you about everything you have going on because you had some really exciting news that you broke on the interwebs this past week. So if you want to tell everybody
Yeah,
about that,
definitely.
you're all up.
So we are so myself and a buddy of mine who I have actually kind of really gotten to know pretty well. Actually, we believe we met on actually Sleeper, interestingly enough. But over time, Austin and I have kind of gotten to know each other and really kind of see Dynasty and a lot of things very similarly. And we have this dream of content creation. And so within the last week, we announced that we decided to start our content creation platform, the Dynasty Super Bros. So we're just basically starting up right now with our X account, and then we'll be starting recording for our podcast YouTube episodes within the next week. So really exciting stuff. Definitely, if you want to follow us, the handle should be. I'm not mistaken. It did not allow me to do Dynasty Super Bros for the handle, but it's Super Dynasty 92. So it's actually Super Dynasty Bros. I think I was mixing up Dynasty and Super, but yeah. I mean, here's the thing: we market it like Super Mario Bros. We want to level your game up, and we want to start something similar to what a lot of other places are doing with just allowing such engagement with bringing in listeners and followers to be able to ask questions of us and being able to use our knowledge to be able to help advance the Dynasty community.
Yeah, I will say. So you said you met him on Sleeper. I'm in a
Mm-hmm.
few of your leagues, and I will say your leagues are the most talkative, if that makes
Yeah,
sense. Which is good. Which is not a bad thing at all. I enjoy it. Just a lot of conversation going in and
yeah.
on. A
We
lot. So that's awesome.
yeah, we got some good guys on there. I've definitely met some really good people. And the thing is, when you're in one league with them, you want to be in more leagues with them, and that's kind of created a little bit of an addiction problem for me. But I've found ways to handle it, and obviously, I would never push myself to the point where, I mean, here's the thing: I end up on Sunday, and it's like, oh shit, Mike Evans is, just for example, is out for the week.
Right.
I need to change my lineup right now.
Yeah, you end up looking like Tyrone Biggums from the Dave Chappelle episode where he's yeah, that's how I am every single day, just checking my lineups and stuff like that. But yeah, I did notice the profile picture you guys have now with the Super Dynasty Bros of the Mar, and I thought that was awesome.
Yeah,
Great, I really enjoy that. I think that's awesome. But
yeah.
thank
The,
you for
the the
coming on.
legalities we'll have to get into it later because I ended up actually using an AI platform to be able to come up with the image, but obviously it's a free platform right now. If we start monetizing, we want to make sure that's legit. But
I
yeah,
think
it
it's
was a
fine.
lot.
I don't see anything wrong with it that I could. I mean, I'm not your legal counsel. Don't use me as your hope here. But it doesn't look like it should be any issue.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. But yeah,
Um,
I'm super excited about it. Yeah, actually, I was the one who decided to put the Garrett Wilson one-handed grab as our banner there across. I think it's a really fun thing that Austin and I want to do. So I'm excited about it. I know you and Rich have a great time, and I'm just really looking forward to helping the community.
Actually, what you should do, you should edit that picture and have Garrett Wilson when he's up like this, like
Mm,
he's punching the little box where the mushroom comes out of.
yes, yes, either that or he has the mushroom in his hand.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there you
that's
go. There you go. But I appreciate you jumping on with me. It was kind of a last minute thing.
yeah.
So I'm sorry I bothered you at what 7 o'clock at night to see if you could jump on soon when I messaged you.
Honestly, it was one of those things like I was just finishing up dinner and I was like, you know what? I could do it. It's fine.
So let's get into that bite segment. That is our news and notes. There is a guy you're going to talk about shortly here. Anthony Richardson is now the starter. Flacco is benched after 2 weeks. Um, he started out okay and then has really faded into obscurity these last 2 weeks. So, what do you think of Anthony Richardson coming back?
Yeah,
Or if you want to
it's
save
just.
that?
I mean, I think we'll definitely talk about it more in depth. I mean, I guess you could try and guess which side of the pole he's going to fall on, but you're probably going to get it right. Um, for me, I just think right now the offense is just a shit show right now,
Mm,
and they thought they were going to be able to have it with Flacco. That's why they went with Flacco instead of Anthony Richardson. But they realized that they don't have a good quarterback in either of them right now. I mean, I think Anthony Richardson, at least the thing you have there is he is somebody that can develop. And in Dynasty in general, you want to hold on to that. You want to
mm.
hold on to your shares or at least try and acquire Anthony Richardson because he's the starting NFL quarterback. Like that's with the ability to rush with the ability to break the game if he is able to figure it out. So, it's not something that you need to invest a ton of your assets into, but at the
Mm.
same time, you should either be holding him or trying to acquire him.
Yeah, so I have a few, actually decent amount of Anthony Richardson shares. I did acquire a bit of him in the offseason. I was clutching everything I had because I was not moving him at
Yeah,
this point because you're not going to get what he could. I mean, the best thing if you are wanting to move him, it's as soon as he has a breakout game. So if it's this week, if he puts up 20 plus this week, okay, move him then. Uh,
yeah,
Otherwise, just hold because his value is no lower than it's going to be at this point because it can't get worse. Obviously, if he gets
right.
benched again, it's just going to be the same thing over and over again. So I just kind of held on to him for dear life because I do believe in the talent. I think I think the issue with him with the tapping out is kind of an anomaly because everything you've ever heard about Anthony Richardson has been super positive. He's a good leader,
Yeah.
a good kid. I just don't know what happened in that moment with him.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to probably the fact that he's a young kid, and
Mm.
he has only had just very little game experience. So maybe him saying, I'm tired, I'm tapping out, like, is this is a lot playing
Mm.
against NFL level defenses and losing, it whether it be close or really not close games. It's really tiring.
I'm
So
gonna
I
make
yeah, I
fun
don't
of
know how much to read into that.
I'm going to make fun of us a little bit here as normal human beings and who talk about a fake football game in fantasy football. There is no way in absolute hell I could throw off a 300-pound man and then rush for what was it, 3 yards. I would be tapping out too. Like, and I get it's different because he's an athlete and he plays football, but like, it's hilarious to see people like myself who's like, oh, come on, I can't believe you tapped out while I'm sitting there
Right.
stuffing my face with pizza rolls.
I guess the part for me that just is confusing about him being tired and saying all these things is he was a fourth overall pick a
Hmm.
couple of years ago. So you can't tell me that like he just doesn't have the physical capability when we were riding on the fact that that was what he had.
Yeah, he
He didn't have
absolutely.
anything else except for the fact that he had all the he was off the charts when it came to his physical capability from what we saw in the draft.
Yeah, he smashed every single metric, the res score. I believe he got a perfect 10 out of 10 on that. He was just a physical specimen. And yeah, like you
Yeah.
mentioned, it was super weird for that to happen, but it could just be him being a 22-year-old kid at the end of the day
Yeah, yeah,
with a 300
and I
pound
think
lineman on his back.
hopefully he gets it figured out.
Yeah, I hope so because I do have a lot of faith in the player. Next bit of news. This is another big one. Shane Waldron, the OC for the Bears, has been fired. I think if I had a cheer sound effect here, I probably would press it. I might. Rich probably put it in there somewhere. He likes to add the
Yeah,
sound effects, but I always end up screwing it up, and hitting the Yu-Gi-Oh sound effect that we have on here by accident. Um, but yeah, I think this was a bad hire from the start. JSN tried to warn us about Shane Waldron, and
yeah,
nobody really paid attention. What do you think about this?
yeah. It's funny. I'm actually looking at my phone right now because I'm trying to figure out who the new offensive coordinator is again for
I think
the
they
Bears.
brought their passing game coordinator into
Okay, Thomas
the role.
Brown. Yeah.
Yeah. Was it their
So it looks
passing game
like he was
coordinator?
actually with the Carolina Panthers before the Bears.
That
Um,
could just get so much worse.
ah, yeah, saying that makes me a little less confident. But what I will say is, could we get any worse? I don't know.
Nah,
It's
you
just like
can't.
I think I shared with you before getting on the episode here, and this is going to have a little bit to do with another riser and faller of mine. But Caleb Williams has not been as bad as what people want to make him look. He hasn't
Mhm.
looked great, but also it's just the product of a really bad team. And I think it shouldn't be over with Waldron. You also need to fire the guy above him too.
I
You got to fire
100%
Matt
agree.
Eberflus. It's not. This isn't going to get better just by firing Shane Waldron. They've got some issues on the offensive line that they've got to get figured out. They invested in everything else except the offensive line, and so next season they've got to figure that. Right, Ryan Poles is a good GM, but this season Caleb Williams was not set up for success with the team that he had. On
Yeah,
the
I
offensive
actually.
side of things with weapons, it's great.
Mhm. I agree. I think Ryan Poles is a good GM too. I know he's under a little bit of heat right now, but I think he gave Caleb Williams a lot of talent and maybe just went a little blind to what needs to block in front
Yeah.
of him, unfortunately. Um, just we'll get into a little bit of the injury report here. Nico Collins is back this week. T. Higgins is back this week. DK Metcalf is back. Michael Pittman is back. All the big fellas are back this week. Thank
All of
goodness.
my
Being
all of
healthy.
my lineups have been replenished now.
Yeah, thankfully, because it was getting a lot. It was getting pretty scary hours out here.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dak Prescott's out this week, and a surprise addition to the injury report today. C.D. Lamb has a back
Yeah.
injury, and he's a. I don't know. Maybe that's we're really not trying to waste him because we
Yeah.
don't really have much to play for because they look horrible.
I made a joke in one of my leagues that I threw it out there. I was like, I really hope this is not like a super early holdout for
Mhm.
CDB. Just like, I've got some back pain, but I'm just trying to get traded later on.
We don't
Like,
make fun of
like, dude,
back pain
this
in
is
this.
after the deadline.
Yeah, we don't make fun of back pain in this show. We can't because I've had two back surgeries. I can't make
Fair
fun of
enough.
it. No, I'm
Fair
kidding.
enough.
Um, so let me ask you this in the CD Lamb conversation without Dak, because it looks like
Yeah.
Dak may not be back this season. As a contender, what do you feel about CD right now?
Um, the problem I see with CD is he's definitely gonna it's definitely gonna hurt to have Cooper rush to Trey Lance unless Trey Lance somehow proves that he is what the 49ers invested into, which we just haven't seen it.
Mhm.
But there are so many other receivers, and this is actually we've been talking a lot about this in leagues that I'm in, and just the conversation has come up of who would you start over CeeDee Lamb right now, and a lot of the answers right now that I'm getting: Cedric Tillman, T.
Ah,
Higgins.
mhm.
It's like these are guys that you wouldn't even think about starting over CeeDee Lamb in a vacuum. But the problem is we can't trust the Dallas offense right now. And for a contender, you need wins.
Right.
Um, but what do? You really shouldn't sell CD. So like you look silly if you're a contender and you sell CD. But do you?
I was
Because I
I was
think
going to ask you this. Could you maybe take CD and tear down to like an
yeah,
AJ Brown plus because
yeah.
you're
Oh, that
probably
would
going to.
be that would be the move to make,
Mhm.
100%. If you could get, I don't know that the AJ Brown, unless they're a rebuilder,
Yeah.
right? I think that's the one
There's
case
a
where you can get
3 year
somebody right
difference
now.
between the two, right? I think, yeah, Brown just turned 27.
Yeah,
CD's
CD is
24.
25,
That was a two
I
year
think.
difference.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, if you're a contender, get that done, or you could even take another tier down. I mean, T. Higgins is the
You
issue
could get a
is with
pretty
the injury.
decent plus. You could get a pretty decent plus. And when T. Higgins, I like that call too. It's just the fear with T is like, if he's going to be, it seems like he's been holding out for this contract situation as well.
Yeah,
So I don't know if that rears its ugly head again at some point during the season. But when he was on the field with Chase, he was out targeting Chase at times during the season and a pretty decent amount too. I'm trying to check my rankings to see who else you could tear down to because I didn't even think of
yeah.
this question. Again, this is another. Oregon Trail conversation. It just kind of happens. How about Drake London plus?
Yeah, I take
I
it.
think you could do that. I would
And
take
I
Drake.
think like Drake London plus, like you can't look at it as who wins which side, because CD is going to come back, and
Hmm.
like of course he's going to be back this season with the back injury, but Dak is going to be back next season, and we know that CD is going to go back to what he was, and we know
Was.
what his ceiling is. So yeah, I mean, if you're a contender though, you've got to do something now if you want to make it through the playoffs. And so tearing down is probably a good move. And Drake London plus, that's a great choice.
Yeah, I think I would do that. Like even a George Pickens plus plus plus
Yeah,
almost. I don't
yes.
think you'll get plus plus plus, but you'll definitely get a decent
I
plus out
mean,
of that one.
you fill another need, like if you're running RB needy, and so you get George Pickens plus
A
a
very.
decent running back,
I was gonna say a low
somebody.
end running back one, a high end running back two. Maybe you
Yeah,
could
I
get.
mean, even like a what Pickens plus Brian Robinson plus picks.
Oh yeah, that's actually a really good one. I like that's a really good call right there. I'm trying to think of what other running back would be. Brian Robinson might actually be the perfect one. I'm glad we're talking
You
this
know what?
out. And
Actually, T. Higgins and Kenneth Walker
I,
straight up for.
motherfucker, I was just about to say that too. Um, Maybe even Pickens for and Josh Jacobs with a pick.
Yeah,
That could get it
yeah.
done.
I mean, you
Damn.
could probably get a second, maybe
Yeah, for sure. I think for sure
plus
you could get
plus
a second.
Jacobs plus Pickens.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. Some interesting news also. It looks like Keon Coleman is out this week with a wrist injury. Cooper's questionable with
Yeah,
this wrist injury. Dalton Kincaid is out with a knee injury. Um, it's all systems go for Khalil Shakir and maybe Mac Hollins again. Gets a sneaky touchdown as he usually does.
yeah,
As a big, I have a picture of Mac Hollins somewhere with me and him together, but that's a story for another time. Uh, Big Mac Hollins guy. But
yeah,
Laporte is out as well, which I was going to go next. How frustrated are you with Kincaid and Laporta?
yeah. Definitely frustrated. I think we. So I own both in a couple dynasty leagues, and I actually recently bought some Laporta,
Mm-hmm.
because I thought it was the perfect buy low time, and he actually was getting the targets from Jared Goff over the last couple weeks, but I guess him I'm less worried about. It's Kincaid that I'm more worried about in general. I just don't know that they're scheming him in the offense the way that people would like them to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's like this week it's gonna be Mac Hollins, Dawson Knox, and Khalil Shakir. That's not what people want to see on the field for the Bills. We want to see
Especially,
Keon Coleman. We want to see Dalton Kincaid. So
especially against the Kansas City Chiefs this week,
right,
which is like the worst time in the world to have all these guys out. Um,
yeah, I saw something online that was like the Kansas City Chiefs have one of the worst tight end defenses against the tight end. And
mhm.
is this time to like pick up Dawson Knox as like a plug and play tight end? I actually do have Brock Wright in a couple leagues as one of my cuffs to Sam Laporta, and
Mm.
I fired him up.
Yeah, I a lot of people have been asking in different discords and stuff like that and online, who would you rather start, Dawson Knox or Will Disley? Because Will Disley has actually been pretty
Yeah,
solid, and so when I looked at it, because I did some digging, this again we're getting off topic, but it happens. Laporta is going up or against the Chiefs. Dawson Knox is going up against the
yeah,
worst tight end defense, and then Disley's going up against the third or fourth worst tight end defense. So the drop off between the two is not bad either way. Um, I prefer to go Disley because I've seen it
same.
more recently that because of what he's done. He
Yeah,
has put up double digit points in the past few weeks. And then Dawson Knox, who has had a history with Josh Allen, just has kind of been the odd man out in that offense with Dalton Kincaid there, even though he's not doing well. It's just he's Josh Allen's been spreading the ball around.
yeah, yeah. I mean, their focus obviously is number one on winning.
Mm-hmm.
So it's I think it's almost like the same way with the Lions. It's like they don't give a fuck about your fantasy team, right? But but really, it's like, damn it! Like I just want more targets for Keon. I want more targets for Dalton Kincaid. Will we get there? I don't know. But yeah, it's definitely frustrating with Laporta and Kincaid right now.
Yeah, they were both. I was actually going to have the both of them in my stock down as like a joint effort, like
Yeah.
the not so good Dynasty Bros, basically the Waluigi and Wario, I guess, of your. Uh, but yeah, it's ugly, and it's like Mike Gesicki's outperforming him. I believe when I looked it up
Yeah.
earlier, Kincaid's tight end 12, Porter's 14. It's not what we had hoped for, but hopefully they turn it around. Of course, they're both injured this week.
Yeah.
Let's get into our stock up, stock down, or risers and fallers, really, whatever you want to call it. Do you want to start negative or positive?
Let's uh let's start positive.
Damn, I was hoping you were going to go
No,
negative.
no, you
I'm
want
a
to start negative? We
no,
can
no,
start negative.
yeah, I'm just kidding. Go ahead. I'll let you go first with this one.
I I guess before I get into it, I think the reason why I want to save the negative for last is because I think it's going to be the most interesting part of our
Hmm.
conversation. I think some of these guys that we're excited about is, it's great, but it doesn't leave the room for a lot of like speculation of like what could happen and where do these guys continue to go up. I mean, they will continue to go up if we believe in them. But my first one is going to be Tyrone Tracy from the New York Giants.
It's a
I think
great one.
he's really been a good staple of the offense recently. And right now, I don't know what's going on with. Well, of course we know what's going on. It's Daniel Jones. But Malik Neighbors, man. It's been really rough in the streets with Malik Neighbors, and Wandale's been getting a lot of the targets. It's been looking great for him. But Tyrone Tracy has been the go-to guy when it comes to they need to get a first down, throw it in the hands of Tyrone Tracy, and he gets it for you. Just to bring up some stats here, I was actually looking in my one of my biggest paid dynasty leagues, and I have, let's see here, right now over the last 5 weeks, he was against Cincinnati running back 5, against Philadelphia running back 39, comes back up to running back 7, running back 35, and then back up to running back 13. And I think it's also because he's in a little bit of a timeshare with Devin Singletary. But Tyrone Tracy is a young kid. He is rookie out from Purdue, 5th round pick. And I think
Former
he
wide
was somebody
receiver,
that I was, and yeah, oh yeah, I think he played a little bit of quarterback too, didn't he?
or was it quarterback? I can't remember. He did change positions. I can't remember if he went from quarterback to running back or wide receiver to running back. If
He
someone
might have
knows,
played.
put it in the
He might
chat
play
if we
both.
can see. He might, yeah. Maybe he's just maybe he played tight end too. I don't know.
Maybe we need him at quarterback for the Giants right
Like a
now.
Taysom Hill.
Exactly, just Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
But I think, once you start to see that like the Giants start to make that transition from the timeshare that they have between Singletary, Tracy, and Eric Gray right now, which Eric Gray hasn't been, he's really been involved in special teams. But I
Which is a
do
damn
think that,
shame.
hopefully he phases out Singletary. That's my
Hmm.
hope. But Tyrone Tracy has the physical capability to do it, and they love to give him the ball. So
Yeah.
he's my first guy.
I like that call. This was a guy I really didn't have a whole lot of interest in coming into this season. I had no shares, and it wasn't because like I didn't think he was good or anything like that. It's just I was taking flyers elsewhere.
Yeah,
But he has been, he's almost pretty much phased Singletary out. And this is the thing with Singletary. We think he's going to be the guy. He happened in Buffalo. He couldn't outplay Zach Moss. He couldn't outplay whoever else you want to put out there. Uh, Tyrone Tracy seems to be, the guy. I mean, of course, he's not a Saquon Barkley or anything like that, but I just had to throw that little jab out there at Giants Nation. But yeah, he's been
thank you,
very
Giants.
solid, and you could see he really wants it. That
Yeah,
fumble last week, to pretty much that was the icing on the game. He was distraught. He was
yeah,
upset.
he was
I
crying
Yeah, I like
on
that.
television.
Yeah, I like that because it shows that you care. And it's a guy,
Yeah,
like you mentioned, late round pick, trying to make a spot who really has opened up some eyes. For sure, he's definitely a riser. He's
yeah,
definitely their RB1 next year. I don't think they
yeah.
make another draft pick at running
I
back.
just don't think I don't think you need to when you have so many other holes to.
Right.
They got to go quarterback this next draft.
what was he, a late fourth? You said, I believe
Fifth.
it was
He was
fifth.
fifth.
So
And I think
could
that's what. Yeah, it kills them. It kills those prospects when we see the draft capital. But those are the guys that are the steals of the draft.
I was going to ask, do you think he's kind of like, not in the way he runs or anything like that, but like the Isaiah Pacheco, kind of the guy we think, Pacheco was a six rounder, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And, every year, like, oh, this is the year he's going to be replaced. They're going to invest some better draft capital. Obviously it's the Chiefs and the Giants. The Giants are not going to invest highly in a running back, but maybe 2 years down the road, we're talking this conversation. But I think Tyrone Tracy could have that job for at least a little bit.
Yeah, I think the comparison with Pacheco is great because Pacheco just runs angry, right? We talk
Yeah.
about that all the time. But I think Tyrone Tracy, you watch him, he just bursts right into in between the line, and he's got that angry run as well of just he wants to get more yardage and just will fight for every yard. So I really like him. I bought a little bit of him in the draft season, and then also had was able to pick him up off of waivers, and that was a great ad.
That's the best feeling in the world when that happens. What are you willing to pay for a Tyrone Tracy?
Ooh, I mean at this point, probably like at least 75% of your fab,
No, I'm sorry. I
right?
meant in
Like
trade value.
sorry. Yeah, because he's first of all he's not sitting on your waivers.
Yeah,
Um,
unless it's a super, start three
right.
players. Yeah,
I would probably say as high as an early second.
yeah.
You know,
I would
I
even
can't I
throw.
can't commit to a first, but
No, I couldn't either. Would you say 2 seconds, maybe two mids, two lates?
definitely like I think a second and a third is probably my limit.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Like a mid two and a mid third. If
Hmm.
I have to do two late, if I'm a contender and I have a late second, and then I maybe have somebody else's late second, I'd probably do that just because, like, at the end of the day, Tyrone Trace is a flyer and a late second is borderline a flyer.
Yeah,
And I'm trying to win money, so I guess I'm just gonna make that gamble. But I do think a
yeah,
second and third, like you mentioned, is probably accurate.
yeah. And I mean, if you're a contender and you do pay that for him, you at least know you're also investing in the future in him, and he is a
Hmm.
young kid.
Exactly. My first riser is when the Mooney hits your eye like a big pizza pie. That's amore. Um, my first
Damn
one is
you,
going to be.
that's great.
Thank you. My first one is going to be Darnell Mooney. This is his best season since 2001 in Chicago. We have been kind of waiting for this because he did look really good a couple of years ago in Chicago, and then kind of faded into
Hmm.
obscurity. That offense didn't look great. He didn't look good. Change of scenery, thank God. He's currently wide receiver 8 on the year, receiving 24% of the target share, which is great because, I think when I looked it up, London's at like 27 or 28. So that's perfect.
Yeah,
So the spread ball's getting spread around. And I don't honestly see much changing if Penix were to be the quarterback because Penix is another guy who can spread the ball. So I'm willing to invest in a Darnell Mooney, especially if I'm a contender. He's a major riser. He's going to be a free agent 2027. So you got what 2.5 years of him being an Atlanta Falcon.
yeah,
So I'm pretty comfortable with that. I could see him being a fringe wide receiver too. The rest of the way, well, the rest of his tenure in Atlanta. Uh, Maybe even high end three, borderline two. I'm okay with that. Again, this is another guy I think is worth a second and a third, or maybe two late seconds. I think it still
yeah.
gets it done. Even an early second, I think I'd be willing to go with that because he's still pretty young. And I just really want pieces of this Atlanta offense right now, especially the cheaper versions of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think our price point is pretty similar. I was thinking basically the same thing you'd pay for Tracy. Um, so yeah, it's he's young. We wanted to see it in Chicago, but as we're now as we've known and as we're seeing right now, Chicago is just such a dysfunctional organization that you can have so much talent, and then when they get traded to an Atlanta, somebody's career just bursts right now. So Darnell Mooney is a great buy, and I think he's somebody you can get on the cheap versus having to pay something like a first plus.
Yeah, because if you look at this offense right now, you've got London firing at all cylinders when he's healthy. He had was it 2 weeks ago? He left the game early, had a touchdown and left the game, so it was starting hot. Mooney took over right after that. Bijan has been lights out the past several
Yeah.
weeks.
Oh yeah.
It's just it's time to invest in this offense now before, and I don't think you're getting Bijan cheap at all. I don't think you're getting London. I think London is acquirable, if that makes sense, but it's not going to be cheap. Mooney is probably, and Pitts is another one. I don't, with the way the tight end landscape looks right now, he's
Yeah.
probably borderline a little expensive. So Mooney to me is the cheapest to get with this offense that's pretty much really good right now, or
Yeah.
looking really good right now.
So I just wanted to address this, and I don't want to take a lot of time with this, Mike. But I think it's something that, especially with me being able to kind of take a second, give it another eye on the situation, that it can clear up a lot of issues for what people are seeing about Darnell Mooney right now. Because right now he is dealing with an Achilles injury, and I even
Mm-hmm.
saw in the chat in a league I'm in that somebody was like, "Oh, well, it looks like he tore his Achilles," and I was like, no, that's actually not what happened. At least we don't know that. We didn't know that at the time. It's
He
looking
was off
more
the
now
injury
that he did
report
not
too.
tear his
Mm-hmm.
Achilles. Did you say he's off the injury report now?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So it looked like just an Achilles strain. It looks like he'll play Sunday. And these kind of things happen. My best advice, especially as a PT and a dynasty fan, is just give it some time. Like when you see those things, don't jump into the news and say, "Oh shoot, like he must have tore his Achilles." Like and yeah, just really got to look into the information, see what's out there that is factual, because you don't want to get yourself caught up in something that's fake and not real information. Um, Darnell Mooney should be fine. It's just these things happen where an Achilles strain or a flare up can happen. Obviously,
So
with McCaffrey, it was an issue that was a bigger problem. But
yeah, so he didn't tear his Achilles, like you said. I'm just double checking it. He's not off the injury report. I misspoke. He has been
okay,
limited, but has no designation as of now whether he's questionable or not. So I think that might be all right. Maybe he's kind of a
yeah,
decoy this week. But even like, how do I put this? As a future asset, I think Darnell Mooney is still safe, if that
I
makes
agree.
sense. Um, I just want pieces of this offense.
Yeah,
Who is your next one?
my next one is Chuba Hubbard.
Good one.
So yeah, the funny thing is I did not want any piece of Chuba Hubbard, and I was basically on the Brooks train all the way because I
He
thought to
was a sell for
myself,
me a few weeks ago, Chuba Hubbard.
was he? Yeah,
Yeah, I had on the episode. I had him as a sell, and I'll let you continue, but I still think he may be.
yeah. Well, and I think probably why he was a sell for you, and he probably still could be,
Mm.
was before the contract. That was also before a little bit of his breakout that the Bears or the Panthers, sorry, it's pretty
It's
easy to
never gonna
mistake those
end.
two organizations.
Yeah,
Um, but the Panthers really started to focus on giving him the ball more. We saw, and the other thing too is, potentially this 150-yard game is it a decoy in the sense that we are a little bit tricked by it and we're thinking, oh, buy Chuba Hubbard. But I do think with the contract, the money talks, and they signed him for 4 years. It wasn't like Christian McCaffrey money, but it also wasn't very. I won't look into the details just because I do think it was a decent amount of money coming to Chuba. The
yeah.
team
It
is
was
invested in him. They want to
four
treat him like
years,
a David
33.
Montgomery.
4 years,
33.
33.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's significant money. I
It
mean,
is very
basically
significant.
just under 9 million a year. Um, yeah, that's really good. I think a lot of people are talking about it now, where it's like people want to fit the Lions mold, where you have two running backs who really complement each other well. And if we can get Brooks and Chuba both firing, that's what the Panthers are wanting to do. At least that's what we think at this point. But I think Chuba's a buy right now. Again, if you're a contender, that's what you're looking more at the season right now. I don't know about the future for Chuba as far as a couple years down the road from now. Um, the contract definitely helps, but I think we're talking about cheaper options to buy into, and I think again you buy Chuba for a second and a third.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. He is a riser, even though I have him as a sell. the money he got with Carolina, a team that hopefully will be ascending at some point. And I do agree, the duo running back is starting to become more prominent in the league. You mentioned Gibbs and Montgomery. I mentioned earlier how Bijan's crushing it. Algier is still, rearing
Yeah.
his ugly head. Um, the Saquon Barkley, he's killing it, but Kenneth Gainwell is still in the game. We
Yeah.
are seeing multiple teams using a duo running back approach. Um, for me, I did have him as a sell a few weeks ago on the episode. I'm starting to, if you're a contender, buy for sure, like you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
But if you're a rebuilder, I would be out there, or even a team that probably should rebuild. Like you're still like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe I can make it. I'm the seventh seed. Maybe I got it. If you can get 2 seconds for Chuba right now, I think I would, because I do think the contract that he got is going to entice people to go out and buy him more, kind of like you mentioned. And so you can kind of drive that price up just by saying, hey, he's going to be part of that team for the next three
Yeah.
years or so. Um,
100%.
so,
And I think it's always important just to think about selling old assets when you're a rebuilder, right? And always sell an old RB, right? You
oh,
can
for
you can
sure.
at least potentially keep an older wider receiver and make sure because I think with them their value can at least go up more significantly and easily. With an old RB, it's like you gotta get that off your roster, especially if you're rebuilding. You got to get the points off the roster, and a veteran old RB is not doing anything for you.
Yeah, he's just one of those guys, Chuba, like you mentioned, that has just been solid. He's never really been like an elite guy, but he's just very good, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So I think him and Brooks would complement each other well. Do you think so? Real quick on Chuba, do you think this affects Jonathan Brooks at all? Because I know that's been a conversation for a lot of
yeah.
people.
I think you take the inverse. If you're a rebuilder, this is the perfect time to buy Jonathan Brooks. And as a contender, I wouldn't sell
No.
because I do think he's just there's a reason he was the first running back drafted off the board. He was on such a stacked Texas team. He sat under Bijan Robinson and Roshan Johnson.
Mhm.
So it, given those guys weren't there in those seasons that he was there, he would have had way more seasons of the production that you saw. When he stepped in, he was the real deal for Texas, but then he just got hurt at the end of the season with the injury. So I think you got to hold Brooks if you're a contender, but if you're I actually did this deal earlier in the year, but sold Brees for I think we talked about it. Brees for Brooks and two firsts,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I do vaguely remember that the last time you were on. Yeah, yeah,
and that's a great deal. Like
yeah. Hmm.
even now, if you're a rebuilder, because Brees is another one. It's like he's a talented running back, top top three in the NFL as far as his dynasty value goes. And I think his value has fallen a little bit because of his recent play, but people still hold the name value for him.
Hmm.
If you can get him off your roster and get two firsts for it, in addition to a young up and coming running back, you got to do that.
It's crazy to think that we want probably more Panthers players right now than we do Jets players, besides maybe outside of Garrett Wilson. I feel safer with anybody on Panthers right now than the Jets, which is
Yeah,
absolutely insane.
as a Brees owner, I'm very frustrated, right?
Oh, for
On a
sure.
team that I'm contending with, because if I'm the team that is rebuilding, again, you sell. But on a contender, it's like, what do you do? You still got to start him every week. He's
Oh, for
still
sure.
he's still he's up there with Bijan and Gibbs.
Yeah,
So
because any week he could put up 30, and then it's like if he's off your roster or on your bench, you're going to be like wanting to throw your phone into the river or something like that. Uh,
yeah, it's a Jets problem. It's
it
just
is
that
major. It's
offense is a problem.
rephrase. It is an Aaron Rodgers problem.
Mm,
That
yes,
dude's a
absolutely.
dick. Like that dude. It's crazy. Sorry again. He got Mike Williams off the team, right? And then Mike Williams catches a moonball from Russell Wilson for a TD, which is just like the funniest thing you could possibly think of is, Mike Williams is somehow going to be relevant again now that he's away from Aaron Rodgers. But I mean, I don't think that's necessarily the case. But he
It's
could.
a testament of two organizations, right?
Oh, for
Like
sure.
the Pittsburgh Steelers are, and I'll glaze up a little bit of the DNA Cruz Steelers, but they really do well with cheap wide receivers or like mid round wide receivers that they get in the draft.
George
They
Pickens was
just
a
they
second rounder. Shit.
right, yeah. Anything that's not a first round receiver, they do
Hmm.
great. Um, Even Antonio Brown was a fifth rounder, but
It's insane. I hate that organization so much as an
as a
Eagles
Philly
fan.
fan, you got to.
Yeah, I do.
But anyway, yeah. I mean, I think definitely buy Brooks.
Mm.
And if you're like I said, a contender, hold. But
Yeah, for sure. Let me get into my next one here. This is kind of a higher end guy, but somebody I've been touting since a June episode I put on here, and that's going to be Justin Herbert, quarterback for the Los Angeles Chargers. Don't look now, though. The Chargers are 6-3 in a wild card team, which is
yeah,
absolutely insane to think about because we thought this team was dead in the water coming into this season. New coach, not a whole lot of weapons. The defense is bad, but they're playing some good fucking football right now, which is
yeah,
hilarious. Um, he's QB 17 or no QB 19 right now. The last 3 weeks he's been QB 6 overall, which is absolutely phenomenal. His passing attempts have gone up these past several weeks, which is something we wanted to see. I think a lot of that may have had to do with some of the patellar fascia. How do you say it? Because you're the PT guy. The injury
sorry,
he had.
sorry. Can you? Oh, what did he have
Patellar
for?
fasciitis. It was the plantar foot or
Oh,
something like
plantar
that.
fasciitis.
Plantar
Yeah, plantar
fasciitis. Thank you.
fasciitis.
I
So
think
yeah,
some
I
of that
mean,
had to do with that in the
yeah,
beginning of the year. But look at the offensive weapons he has right now. Lad McConkey, who has 492 yards. Joshua Palmer, 342. QJ, 306. That's a shock to me. Will Disley, 272. These are just like a cast of characters that he is making relevant right now, right?
yeah.
So back in June,
I'll tell you that's a Harbaugh thing. As a
it
Michigan fan,
is.
that's a
Oh,
Harbaugh thing.
100%. It's a hardball thing. Back in June, I put out an episode. I did an episode on tearing up or tearing down from a player. And one of my tears down was CJ Stroud. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to take CJ Stroud and trade him for Josh or Justin Herbert plus.
Yeah,
Because at the time, you could have gotten a guy like a Devontae Smith with Justin Herbert for CJ Stroud. And now looking at it, you have CJ Stroud at QB 17. Like you could say, oh, his wide receivers are hurt. That's been a very recent thing with Diggs going down. Nico's been gone for a little bit, but he's coming back. Tank Dell's
yeah,
been relatively healthy. That offense is, you could say, should be better than the Chargers offense just with the weapons they've had. But QB 17 to QB 19, and then you got a guy like Devontae or whoever you wanted to add to it, you would have made out like a bandit at this point.
yeah. That's another conversation about CJ Stroud we could get into for a long time, right?
Yeah.
As a Michigan fan, I
Oh,
know the
that's right. I didn't even think
inconsistency.
about that.
Yeah, so because I watch a lot of these guys at Ohio State consistently being in the same conference, right? And CJ Stroud, he looked amazing in the Georgia game against Georgia in college. That was really what I think really sold his draft stock up.
For sure.
And he's got the talent, but the problem is the consistency. And it's like, you know, where you have the weapons,
Mhm.
and even before those guys went down, what were you doing with those weapons? I mean, Nico, of course, that was a big loss. Um, but at this point, he's playing like Bryce Young behind that offensive line.
For sure.
So
Yeah.
he's much better than Bryce Young. But
Yeah.
at the same time, it's just like the offense doesn't have it together right now. Um, Playing against the Lions last week, it was evident to see that like they can't they have just as many problems as the Lions did moving the ball down the field when Jared Goff threw 5 picks and they still won.
Right. That which is one of the most insane things I have ever heard in my life. But the reason why, and the reason we're seeing it right now with Stroud and Herbert is I, I have Herbert as like I would have to double check, but I'm going to say my QB 7 in Dynasty, right? And I have
Yeah,
Stroud at 4. But to be honest with you, the gap between those two, they're in a very similar tier for me
it's not
because
far.
you're not going to see a huge difference between the two because you're not getting a rushing upside from either one, right?
Yeah,
You have very good pocket passing quarterbacks who can spread the ball around. So if you could, I don't think you can anymore tear down from Stroud to Herbert. I think it's, I mean, if you are, you're talking like a third or something very cheap at this point, maybe a second with Herbert. I would smash accept that if you could get Herbert
yeah,
in a second for Stroud at this point, or a player like the guy you're going to talk about soon, Cedric fucking Tillman. If you could get Tillman and Herbert at this point, absolutely taking that because the gap between the two at the end of the season is not going to be an issue at all. And honestly, if looking at it right now and while I'm talking myself into this, I want to bump Herbert up even more just based on what we've seen in this Harbaugh offense, how good he's looked the past 3 weeks, and what we could see in the future for this team. Because this team's going to add um, a playmaker in the offseason, whether it be
yeah.
this year or next year, they're getting somebody. You know, it whether it's a tight end or a wide receiver, they're getting somebody.
And Matt McConkey's look great.
Oh, for
Uh,
sure.
I think if you're that person that invested, I actually invested a second rounder in him in the last draft, and that was I'm feeling pretty good about that. I still have him on my taxi, but no, actually just took him off the taxi I think a week or two ago. Feeling great about it though. That
For sure.
offense is going to support Herbert and McConkey pretty well.
I think it's the I forget. It's like 500 yards you want as a rookie to show future fantasy
Yeah.
success, and I think the Dynasty nerds put that out. So shout out to them; those guys are awesome. But I do think that's like the mark you want to hit as a rookie, and he's at 492. So unless
Um.
something
Yeah.
catastrophic happens, he's gonna hit it, right? But
Yeah.
he
No.
has looked really good.
It's been a good run. But
Uh,
yeah, just to stick closely to the Harbaugh stuff, that's what you see the efficiency go up. That's
mhm,
what JJ did when on the national championship team last year. They don't pass for as many yards, but their yards mean more, right?
for sure.
You're not going to see 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns from Justin Herbert, but you're going to see a lot more efficient of an offense. And fantasy wise, it's still going to work out.
What is he at now? I actually didn't type that in. I'm going to look that up real quick.
So,
Um, I do have an honorable mention I want to get into just really quickly um, before we go into our fallers because I do think
yeah.
this guy needs to be mentioned. He's 11-1 right now, 11 TDs to one interception,
Okay.
which is just absolutely insane to
That's what
think
you
about.
want,
Yeah,
right? I mean, if you're hitting like 30 and 30 like Jameis Winston, you're gonna be
for sure.
pissed, right? So I would, if you're the Chargers, I would much rather have a guy who throws very few picks than is doing what Justin Herbert's doing.
For sure. Real quick, honorable mention guy I want to mention here is underestimated, and that's going to be Audric Estime. 15 carries last or 14 carries last week out of his 15. All season he's had 15 carries altogether. He had 14 last week against one of the best defenses, rush defenses in football. They've given up third in yards given up and second in yards per carry. The Chiefs. He had 43% of the snap share, 53 yards, 3.8 yards a carry. I think this is a sign of things to come for the Denver Broncos. I really liked Audric Estime. He was my running back six of the class. He was kind of like a guy that I think could be your two down back. Obviously, not at the biggest pass catcher, going to get you the 4 yards in a cloud of dust kind of guy. But if you're looking at the carries last week for this team, Marvin Mims was second with 3 carries, Jaleel McLaughlin 2 carries, Javante 1 carry, and with the biggest game of the year for them, and Audric Estime had 14 of those carries. There's
Yeah,
something
that's a clear shift. And as a Javante, oh man, Javante owner and somebody who I at one time I was wanting to try and get him for at least 2 seconds. Um, but yeah, you have to feel way more comfortable on Audric Estime.
he can come off your taxi squad now. I think. Let's get into your first faller here. Who do you got?
I have Anthony Richardson. We talked about it
Hmm.
earlier, right? I don't think I have to spend a lot of time on this just because um, we know what we're getting with the fact that they had to put Flacco on the bench. It's like you put Anthony Richardson on the bench because at some point it was kind of embarrassing on social media to see all the things of, oh, he's tired, he's coming off the field because he doesn't have the physical talent we just talked about earlier. It's almost not possible for him not to have physical talent. It's just I think he hasn't played in enough games to be able to be confident to know that he can ball. We've seen the production out of him when he actually is able to put his physical tools to the use with 60-yard bombs, with crazy plays to be able to get a first down with his legs. I think he's a great buy right now if he's available, at least for if you can get him for a first and you're a rebuilder, you might take that investment, right?
Yeah,
I would probably keep it a late first.
for sure.
And
Yeah.
that's my max. But he's a starting quarterback in the NFL, and they're not going to turn it back to Flacco now.
No, they
Um,
can't. They can't.
it would be embarrassing as an organization to say, hey, you know what? Actually, this is the second time we're going to take the ball from you and give it back to Flacco. No, they're going to stick with Anthony Richardson the rest of the season. So, I think this is the perfect buy low time now.
Mhm.
You obviously the perfect time was actually when he was benched, but he's not going to be, unless he completely just fails at the job, he's not going to be any lower than this.
Yeah, I don't want to say this for Steichen because I don't think he's coaching for his job at this point. I think he's safe for at least another year, no matter what happens. But
Yeah.
I will say Chris Ballard is their GM. I think he is kind of like we need to put him the fuck back out there because if this doesn't work, like it's my job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he's had some really big misses. There's been issues in that front office forever. Um, to go back in time a little bit, I still think they gave up on Carson Wentz too early, but that's a conversation for another time. Um, I think that dude is, GMing for his job right now. And I think Steichen is like, yeah, I'm probably under the microscope too. So we need to do something. You're not a playoff team, right? You're not a championship level team. So why not go with the guy that has um, to show something, right, for your future? Because
Yeah.
you need to see what you have.
Yeah. He needs game experience. It's just
Mhm.
not enough. So, yeah, I would say, again, I'm not extremely confident that Anthony Richardson will be a top 15 quarterback by next season, right? That
Mhm.
he finishes out the year and it's like, this is the guy that we bought into. But at the same time, I think his price has gotten low enough as a starting quarterback in the NFL that if you need somebody and you want to invest for the future, let Anthony Richardson sit on your bench until he can prove something. And I think you got to hold him. You can't sell him unless it's for something crazy like getting an early first at that point or first plus.
Yeah, it's definitely not worth it to move him right now. And speaking of worth it, I need to go into my faller because this kind of hurts a bit. I'm fucking great at this tonight. Is he still worthy of a first? That's going to be Xavier Worthy. I'm still holding on, to be honest with you, but he was my dark horse rookie of the year for the offensive side of the ball. A dark horse, right? Um, but I'm really frustrated with how they're using him. He's more of a gadget guy, a lot of end arounds, a lot of quick screens, 20 receptions, 246 yards, 3 TDs, 2 TDs on the ground. His yards per route run is abysmal at 0.95. So you're not even getting, a yard essentially, which is not great, right? Hasn't had a game over, has only had a game over 40 yards twice this year and hasn't done that since week 4. So all
Yeah.
signs are pointing down to Xavier Worthy. And I'm a little nervous, to be honest with you, but we've seen this in an 80 Reid offense before when it comes to rookies, right? A very
Yeah.
slow start. They start to pick it up in the middle to the end of the season. Um, the second season's usually a breakout. But with Rasheed Rice being out, with DeAndre Hopkins not being the guy anymore, even though he's been very good the past few weeks, Travis Kelsey wasn't much of a factor up until Rasheed Rice went out. I thought we'd see more of
Yeah.
Xavier Worthy, and it's really frustrating because we're not seeing it. This is one of those ones where I'm on the fence about, to be honest with you. He's still a faller for me. Do I want to re-roll and get a late first again? Because essentially you drafted him as a late first, right? Are you at the point now where you want to re-roll to another, essentially, depending on the draft, another flyer wide receiver or running back? Because this is a running back heavy class. Um,
Yeah.
I'm kind of at the point where I'm just going to hold, right? Because I'm still probably going to get a second at some point. You're going to the value between like the 112 and a 2.4 is not the biggest drop off in the world, to be honest with you. So I think
Yeah.
I'm willing just to hold at this point, but he's still a faller. What do you think of Worthy?
So let me ask you this question because I think this is a good gauge of his price. But I actually bought Xavier Worthy for as a rebuilder by selling Mike Evans for Xavier Worthy in a third. How do you feel about that? Is that an overpay for like, or at least I'm not selling Evans for enough?
Say it one more time, maybe
So I sold Mike Evans for Xavier Worthy in a third,
in a
a 25
rebuild.
third in a rebuild.
Okay. I
So do
actually
you feel
like
like
that.
okay?
I do like that. Because the way I look at it as Mike Evans is worth a late second or very early or late first, very early second, and you're getting a third on top of that. So
Yeah,
I'm okay with that because I still think Worthy is just right at that price point of a late first or an early second.
that's where the beginning of my thoughts go on that because I think he is still worth investing in if you want
Worthy.
to take the shot. Yeah,
Right.
sorry, not Evans.
No.
Worthy.
I'm saying worthy of it. No, I'm
Oh, he
kidding.
is worthy.
Yes.
Damn you, Mike. It's going over my head a little bit. The other times have been hitting like gold. That time
Thank you.
it just went over me, but that one's great. So no, he's worthy. He's worthy of at least the long term. Looking at the long term, if maybe you think he's going to make the shot, but the problem is, I think what you just talked about earlier of they have Rice, they're trying to figure out what they have at wide receiver. They had to go and buy DeAndre Hopkins because they didn't feel confident enough in the receiver room they had, and of course Juju Smith-Schuster went down,
Right.
so he was
That's
starting
another
to
guy I
look
didn't
like
forgot to mention.
he was starting to look like he was going to replace that Rashee Rice role on
Mm.
Juju Smith-Schuster. My issue with Worthy is the type of wide receiver he is. He's not that target hog that Rashee Rice is, that Juju Smith Schuster was going to be, and what they're trying to make DeAndre Hopkins, right?
Right.
So my issue is with Worthy, is he only going to be catching those long touchdown passes because he's the gadget guy that can run all the way down the field, or is he going to be a dominant wide receiver in alpha? And I don't know that he could be an alpha.
My thing is with him is when I'm going back to his college scouting and even some of his NFL stuff, he's a better route runner than what they've given him so far, if that makes sense. Like the
Yeah,
routes that they have him doing, it's just a lot of deep, posts or a lot of like screens, end around stuff like that. I want to see a little bit more, like the whip routes and the slant. I think he can do those things. I think he's a very talented route runner. It's just
yeah,
we're not seeing it so much lately, which is frustrating. When you said target hog, I don't know if he's there, obviously, because
yeah,
he's a smaller wide receiver, but he's a guy that should be still getting, when you say target hog, I'm thinking a guy that's hitting 10 plus, right? In my brain. I don't know if that's how your brain works as well, but when you say
no,
target
I think
hog, I
that's
think
that's perfect idea
when I
as far
see
as the
Xavier
line goes.
Worthy and I think he's as good as he is with his routes, I think he should still be
Yeah,
hitting 7 to 8. He's really not hitting that at this point.
yeah. I actually think, and tell me if this is too much of a hot take here, but I think Xavier Worthy is hopefully what you want to see, what we're seeing with Jameson Williams. Like
Yeah, a very
Jameson
similar
Williams
play. Yeah,
expanded his route tree with Detroit, and he's stepping up now. Recently, it hasn't looked great, but we see that there could be a path for Jameson Williams to be a dominant wide receiver of this offense for Detroit because he's doing so much more now than what he was his first two seasons with the Lions.
for sure.
If
It,
Worthy can do that, that's the way that you use him.
Shit, if Worthy can stay on the field, it would be perfect too. Let's get into your second one, and I already know who it is. I had him
Yeah,
on
yeah.
mine as well.
I think I alluded to it earlier in the conversation, but I sent Mike a graphic that I
Mhm.
found online, and it basically was comparing Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams over the last 6 games. Their stats are basically the same, and it's so funny because there are the things that are being said about Jaden Daniels that are, oh, I mean, he is sensational right now,
Mhm.
right? Like the arm is there from what we wanted to see from Jaden Daniels, and he is right now the best rookie QB of this class, in my opinion. But
Uh, Go ahead.
I know you believe in the guy that I'm going to talk about here in a second,
Well,
and I
my
more
argument
a little
is
bit more.
Drake May has looked the best for the past few weeks with the weapons he
Yeah,
has. But that's a
this is
conversation.
true.
That's a
I
conversation for
think
another.
I think each of those guys have an equal way in the conversation, and that's
For
why I
sure.
want to talk about Caleb Williams.
Mhm.
Um, I think the stats, right? They look the same, and we're saying Caleb Williams needs to sit. He needs to, at this point, he's the reason why the offense looks so bad. And it's like, no, this is all a Bears problem. This is an
Right.
Eberflus problem. And so I think this is the perfect time to buy low on Caleb Williams because this is the lowest you're ever going to be able to get him if you believe in what Caleb Williams is. Um, it's what we saw against the Jacksonville defense, who is now looking really competent,
Respectable.
um,
Right.
pretty respectable, I'd say. And what he did against them with the 4 TDs, and I think it was almost over 400 yards. Well, I think it was just over. It was over 300, but 4 TDs. That's what we want to see from Caleb Williams, and the way that he was moving the ball in that game. You see some of the issues where it's like he's not getting enough protection. He's missing guys, and it's not him. It's Matt Eberflus. It was Shane Waldron.
Yeah.
Those guys are the problem. Caleb Williams is going to be fine. Buy him low right now. That's the way I feel about it. And I'm actually not a big Caleb Williams guy, but he is being way undervalued.
Yeah. So my my little joke I had to bring in Caleb Williams into this conversation was, are you bearing down on the first pick in the NFL draft? Um, anyway, he my I 100% agree with you. He is a buy low, in my opinion, right? Um, but the last 3 weeks have been bad. He's been under 10 points in fantasy for the last 3 weeks. Before
Yeah,
the bye, though, he was a top six QB both of those weeks, and it's frustrating that it's kind of gone downhill, and the offense coordinator is now fired. I do agree with you. I think it's mostly him and Eberflus is the problem, and the offensive line for sure. I think the talent is there, and I'm 100% agreeing with you on buying low. I did look up a trade, Dynasty Dad, which is a trade database.
yeah.
I looked in to see what Caleb was going for. I saw this because you mentioned him as well. Jaden Daniels for Caleb and two first. Now, obviously, we don't know where those first are, but I'm
You take
taking
that.
Caleb in the two first,
Yeah,
right?
I don't know who's offering that, but I would even take Caleb for depending on the first Jaden. Sorry, Caleb in an early first for Jaden.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah, for
I would
sure.
take Caleb in the early first.
Yeah, I think I would too, for sure. Rich and I last week talked about Jaden Daniels and how this next stretch of games, going back to last week, but they had the Steelers and the Eagles, were going to be a real
Yeah,
test for him. And he's looked borderline pedestrian the past two
yeah.
weeks. And that's tough to say as a guy who's probably still going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year because he has been so dominant, unless things go, again, catastrophically bad. But I am still in on Caleb Williams. If you were to put, we're talking stock up, stock down, and he's a stock down, where would you put your panic meter on him at a one
As
through
far as
10?
Caleb,
Yeah,
out of 1 through 10, Panic, I'd probably put at 4 or 5.
that's where I was
Right?
going to go, about a 4.5 to 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I do believe in the talent. I do think they are going to make a major change at quarterback or at head coach this offseason. I do think they
Yeah.
could bring in your offensive coordinator at the Detroit Lions.
Ben Johnson. That would be so. We always talk about wanting offensive-minded coaches. That is the number one guy that you probably want for the Bears. And then, of course, Deion Sanders is going to throw his hat in the ring. But
True.
yeah,
That's an interesting one.
I think Ben Johnson probably takes the job if he leaves.
Yeah, for sure. To get into my last one here, the Candle Wicks is out. That's going to be Dontavian Wicks, the dynasty darling of this offseason. A guy I had been telling everybody to sell when everybody else was saying to buy, because that offense in Green Bay is just a everyone's getting a target, but it's not like the Atlanta Falcons where it's like 24% or 26%. It's, Dontavian Wicks is getting 15%. Romeo Dobbs is at 18.4. Christian Watson's at 12. Like, it's very low, but everybody's getting the ball. Dontavian Wicks is wide receiver 74, 6 weeks of single digits or 0 points fantasy wise. Are we kidding here? Like, listen, he's a good story. He's a very good wide receiver, but that offense is too unpredictable with its
Yeah,
targets, if that makes sense. I feel like there's no dominant force. There's no Drake London, right? There is no AJ Brown or Devontae Smith because both those guys are still going to get featured. Um, this guy's just not even doing it with Dobbs or Watson off the field. Dobbs was suspended. Watson's been hurt.
yeah,
Listen, I can't get into the Wicks hype, right? I never have. I never could. It's a frustrating offense. If you could still get a second for him, I'm all in on doing that because I do think there are some people that still believe in him. I've been out. Um, I, I I can't say any more about how I would get him off my roster.
yeah. Um, that's I feel pretty much similar to that. I think you know what you have with Jaden Reed. You know what you have with Tucker
I
Craft.
forgot even to look up what Jaden Reed's target share was, but
It hasn't looked well. Sorry, it just didn't look good for the Packers offense recently because I feel like Jaden Reed did not have some great games recently.
he's been
Um,
banged up too, though. I believe he's missed a game.
he had a good week before the bye, and then it's kind of been a little bit all over the place. I mean, he started off
17
really hot.
17% target share for him as well. So literally
Okay,
everybody's getting something, right?
yeah. I
Um,
mean, even Tucker Craft, it was a surprise. It's like out of nowhere, this guy steps up and basically claims himself the TE1 of that team.
mhm. What are you if you have Wicks, what are you looking to do with him?
You know, on the teams that I have him, I'm holding, right.
Mhm.
If you have a deep enough bench and you have players that he's definitely on the chopping block though. I think it's come up in various leagues of mine that they're asking, hey, should I be dropping this guy or Wicks?
Mhm.
And sometimes, I guess who would you rather have on your bench? Would you rather have somebody like Dontavian Wicks, or would you rather have I don't know. That's right. Well, Cedric Tillman's got to stay as a flex the rest of the season. No, I mean he's basically on the chopping block right now, on a
Wait,
lot of your teams.
hold on a minute. Did you give both of your trending ups?
I did.
Did I?
No, because we were not going to talk about Cedric Tillman, man.
No, no,
Everybody's been
no.
talking about
I
Cedric
wasn't
Tillman.
going to talk about Cedric Tillman.
Oh
I was
no, I
trying
had
to give
Tyrone
you
Tracy
the
Cheatham.
honor of. I was trying to give you
You,
the honor of Tillman.
yeah, You know what? Let's go on a Cedric Tillman love fest right now. No, I'm going to be on here for
The
like
last
another
few
hour.
minutes here. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it's Cedric Tillman is definitely still a guy you should be buying, but the
Mm.
problem is I don't know what does it take to get him at this point. It's got to take a first,
Yeah, I don't know if I'm comfortable there. I'm still at a second with him.
right? Like giving up that for him, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But what do you want as the owner
I'm
in
holding.
return for him? Yeah,
I'm holding for sure because one of two things is going to happen, right? Jameis Winston's the future. I think we're pretty much done seeing Deshaun Watson. Whether uh, they move on from him somehow, or Jameis is the starter in the beginning of the year, and I'm okay with that with
yeah,
Cedric Tillman because we see what we're seeing with him, or they draft a quarterback, right? And if they get a guy like Cam Ward, I'm even more ecstatic than anything. Um, I am made so this is a Debbie league, right? A Debbie depleted draft. I
yeah.
don't know if you're familiar with Debbie. Do you play Debbie? I don't know if we
I don't play a lot of Devi, or actually I don't play any Devi.
right.
But I've seen a lot about playing in Devi leagues, and so I've definitely wanted to. I just can't. What's the main platform you use for that?
So we the platform I'm using is Sleeper, and a guy keeps
Okay.
track of it with like defensive players on what college players you have on your roster.
Okay.
So I gave up a Devi depleted first, so it's not as valuable as a normal first round pick.
Yeah.
It's essentially I would call that like a mid second ish or late second ish if you were to talk it in dynasty terms. And I got a fourth on top of Tillman for
Okay.
that. So if you could do something like that where you give like a early second, you could get like Tillman in a third back or Tillman in a late
Yeah.
early fourth. I'm 100% in because I do think he fits that alpha wide receiver profile, like a Michael
Yeah.
Pittman. My comp for him coming out of college was Alshon Jeffrey. I am a big Tillman guy. I've always been.
Yeah. I mean, that offense in Tennessee, of course, Jalen Hyatt didn't turn it out to be what
I was
we
out on
possibly
him.
expected he was going to be. But uh, Tillman was a guy that seemed a little bit more stable than Hyatt, just in the way that their play styles are. Hyatt being very similar to somebody like Xavier Worthy. But Xavier Worthy just came out with better draft capital. That was
Right.
all. But yeah, I love Tillman. Man, I 100% agree. He's gonna be he's gonna be great in the future for the Browns because, like you said, they'll end up with a high draft pick. They got to move out of the Deshaun Watson situation. So if they end up drafting a QB in the first round, do you think they trade up for a QB? Because
I
Cam
mean,
Ward would be
it could
amazing on the
happen.
team.
It depends on who's there in the
Yeah,
beginning of the draft or in the like the first few picks. Like I think New England's going to be there in the one through three spot.
yeah,
Jacksonville might be. Um, Carolina, like all those teams really don't need quarterbacks. So they might just if the Browns get like the sixth pick and everybody ahead of them doesn't really need a QB, they could just kind of sit put, right?
yeah,
Or if they're starting to hear rumblings that somebody else is going to move up, maybe they do. But they don't
yeah,
necessarily have to because I think the top of the draft is going to be got teams that don't necessarily need a quarterback. Or,
yeah. No,
Carolina, you never know what they do.
yeah. I mean, it depends on Bryce Young this year, I guess, and how
And
he
how he
finishes the
finishes
season out.
out. Yeah, how he finishes it out. But I've already kept you over that hour allotted time. So I will close it with this. In the description below, you will see that the Dynasty Dogs have a sponsorship with Couch Scouts. If you want IDP scouting, if you want Devi scouting, you need to go on to couchscouts.com on the link below and you click it. You use dogs, DAWGS at checkout. You get 15% off and make sure you dive in and let the couch scouts know the dogs want on the couch. So Ben, I want to say thank you again for jumping on. Thank you again for going over the
Yeah,
hour time. Thank you for not letting me go 2 hours again this time. And I'm super excited to see what you guys have going on at the Super Dynasty Bros.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. A last minute thing is not always the easiest, so I really do appreciate it.
No, I mean, I was excited to jump back on, especially after I heard at least how successful the last episode that I was on with you was.
It was our
It
most
was
successful episode ever. So I appreciate that.
it was a fun time, and I think you and I can chop it up about different players, especially the ones that we have a great love for, like Cedric Tillman or Devonta Smith, and
Or St.
it's
Brown.
it's a great time. So definitely, I would love to be involved in more episodes and just featured on as a guest whenever possible. Obviously, I'm going to be going under this undertaking of working with Austin on the Super Dynasty Bros, but it's a great time coming on here.
Yeah, thank you again. And we will see you guys all next week. Have a good night. There we go. Okay, I actually ended a lot sooner than I thought. The last time I hit the end button, it was like 10 seconds of me just